the person who is about to present is Professor Anselm Bourne. He is he's out in New Jersey. He's attached to Stillman College, so he wasn't able to. Anselm Bourne is a former national 800-meter runner. He went out to the U.S. on scholarship back in the 1970s, I think it was, or early 80s. And he's been involved in the whole business development field and has, of course, demonstrated patriotic service to Trinidad and Tobago. Among others. And it wasn't too long ago that he actually approached, I would say about 4 years ago, he approached the TNT government with a proposal for boosting the sports infrastructure of the country. Now he has made another effort, and we are therefore going to hear his take on the whole program to make Trinidad and Tobago a globally competitive nation in sport. And I say this against the backdrop of Trinidad and Tobago just having completed at the Commonwealth Games, where we picked up 3 medals in 2 sports. We picked up medals in cycling and track and field. So, are you hearing us, Anselm?
I'm hearing you guys loud and clear.
Okay. We have also on the panel Ms. Diane Henderson, who will join us shortly. She is the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, installed earlier this year, I believe. She will join us shortly. And in the conference room is Mr. Sean Powder, and Mr. Sean Powder is a resident of New Jersey as well. So Mr. Powder would contribute to the panel when the presentation is finished. At that point in time, we will ask him to join us up here. I believe that's where he would need to be. Camera team, he would have to be up here. Okay. So thank you very much, and let us, at this point in time, give the floor to Professor.
Directly, Diane Henderson and Sean Powder as well. And I hope all of you are having a fantabulous and splendiferous rest of the day, and you all are enjoying Tobago. I just wanted to give, I heard Dr. Phillips talked about, some of my background. I just want to give a little, enhance it just a little further in that, I came out of Chumaka, Claventil, building 1 apartment, 2-1. I spent most of my first 18 years of life in Trinidad and Tobago and spent most of those lives in Laventil. I migrated from Chumaka, Claventil, building 1 apartment, 2-1 in 1977, on July 4th, 1977, and came to the United States, where I acquired a track and field scholarship to go to Biennial University from 1978 to 1982. I was eventually also named captain of the track team in my junior year. So I was captain of the track team for 2 years. I went on to work 23 years on Wall Street. I took early retirement in 2012. And then I came back as a professor at Biennial University, teaching global business, organizational behavior, and principles of business management. And Dr. Phillips, was very kind in his introduction of me. And I just wanted to add one other thing in that. I'm a 20-time world record holder in Masters track and field. So just to put it in a little perspective, 20 times in the history of the world, I was the first one to achieve something in masters track and field for men 40 and over. So this little black boy from Chumaka, Claventil, have established 20 world records in masters track and field, and I still continue to the subject of the day. The subject of the day is Sports Development Academy. Now, I'm very enthusiastic about sports in Trinidad and Tobago. And I love track and field because, I've represented Trinidad quite a few times in track and field. I represented Trinidad at the Caribbean, the CAC Games. I've also represented Trinidad at the Carifta Games. So from a youth, all the way up, to representing Trinidad at the Central American and Caribbean Games. I love track and field very much. So in maybe 2009 to 2011, my son, who was an excellent football, we call it football in America, soccer. He was an excellent soccer player, and he was playing and he was getting really, really good in soccer. And I decided that, well, what are some of the things you're going to do to make your son better? And so I did some research and I came up with IMG Academy. IMG Academy is an academy in Florida, and it involves many different sports. And you could send your kids there for enhanced training, and it could be tennis, it could be basketball, it could be baseball. And this is big academy. People call from all different parts of the world, and send their kids there for camps. They also have school as well. They have a high school as well, IMG Academy High School. And so kids go there and they will spend time in the school, for these sports, or you can go for a short camp, could be 2 weeks. My son went for 2 weeks for soccer, and I said to myself at that point in time, how great would it be for Trinidad and Tobago to have something like this? And I named it Sports Development Academy. Right? We could be one of the first Caribbean islands to have our own sports development academy with these different sports. And we could, kids can come and they pick their sports. We'll have different sports. I mean, we wouldn't have all the sports like MG Academy. We have the sports that these kids, maybe we could have a basketball, track and field, swimming, golf, tennis, as an example. And these kids can be the future players of Trinidad and Tobago. The thing about it is this, right? I've approached both governments back in 2010 to 2015 and 2015 to 2020, and I basically got the same end result. So with something like this, I thought this would have been a fantastic thing. And also, with the Sports Development Academy, many of these kids will be able to get scholarships to go to different schools all parts of the world. But let's just say the United States of America, for example. All right. And these kids who then have these scholarships, get these scholarships, can be the future players for Trinidad and Tobago. It could be in football, it could be in basketball, it could be in track and field, it could be in swimming, and also it could be in American football too as well. Because rugby as a sport in Trinidad can basically transfer over to football in the United States of America. And there's so many scholarships in all these different, particular sports. So I felt it was a great thing for Trinidad and Tobago. So I said, Anselm, what's the next step? So I actually came to Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm giving you guys just as it is, right? just not now, right? It's just not now. The time is not there as yet. And I happened to get in contact with Dr. Andre Phillips, and he's having this, diaspora event. Do I want to make the presentation with respect to Sports Development Academy? And I say, of course, of course. I want whatever is the best for my country of Trinidad and Tobago. And I got to tell you, I've been in this country now for 45 years. I left Trinidad and Tobago July 4th, 1977. I am in United States of America for 45 years. And I am still going to continue to try my best to improve sports in Trinidad and Tobago through this type of program, because I went to school on a scholarship. If I wasn't able to acquire a scholarship to go to Seton University, I don't know what I would have been today. I really don't know what I've been, because my mother, who, with my other three brothers, she was busy working hard, trying to make a life for us, trying to buy our school books or uniform and so on, right? And when she came to this country, 2 years before us. And then in 1977, we got a visa in order to come to the United States of America. And she was busy working, so I had to decide what I was going to do. So on my own, I decided I was going to go back to high school for 1 year. I went back to Boys and Girls High School in Brooklyn for 1 year with one thing in mind, and I call it the double A. It's academics and athletics. Let me repeat that, double A, academic and athletics. I dedicated 1 year of my life to strictly academics and athletics in order to acquire a track and field scholarship to go to some school. And it so happened that I was fortunate enough in order to get a full scholarship. I didn't for me and for my parents to see that, I was actually the first one in my family that went to college. So let me quickly take you guys through. I had prepared a PowerPoint presentation, for both governments, and I'm going to kind of take you through the PowerPoint presentation, what I presented back then, because I think, Sports Development Academy, it's an idea that, should be on the table. It doesn't have to be in this same format, but it's an idea that should be on the table because, when I come to Trinidad and I go speak to a lot of the athletes, it's like sometimes from a scholarship perspective, it's there, but it could be better. It's there, but it could be better. So let me just make sure I can do this correctly. Let me share my screen. That's what they tell me. Share the screen. Okay. Share. Okay. Can everyone see that? All right. So this is the name of the organization at that point in time was called Sports Development Academy. And as you see, there's a business presentation. I already had a logo done, I had everything done, So this is just what like handing you a business plan, and you can do as you please with it, right? So, one thing though, maybe I gotta figure out how do I go up on this? How do I go to the next slide? I'm not sure. Let me see more. Okay. No, let's see that. Oh, there we go. Oh, wow. Yeah, all right. Okay, so folks, back then, the principal members of this organization, Sports Development Academy, was myself and a young man called John Marshall. He's a former Olympian here in the United States of America. And it just tells you that between both of us, we have had over 50 years of varied experience in international experience of sport. So here we have a gentleman who actually represented the United States at the Olympics. He was a former track and field coach, head track and field coach at Villanova University, and he's now a head track and field coach at St. Peter's University. And what this tells you is already the connection as far as, and he's a head track and field coach, the connection here already with respect to scholarships. So you have a person already at a school, he's a head coach, so there shouldn't be any problem with the guys who have, as they call it, the double A's, academics and athletics, in order for them acquiring athletic scholarship. And by the way, folks, this program, as far as I'm concerned, at that point in time, the program wasn't a program where I was coming to Trinidad and trying to make money or anything like that. At that point in time, it was an idea that I thought would have been great for Trinidad and Tobago, and I brought the idea to the both governments of Trinidad and Tobago, right? And of course, there's myself, right? It says, of course, I am graduated from Biennial University. You know, I have my MBA, you know. For the men's 1500, at 56 years of age, I ran 4 minutes and 13.77 seconds, which still stands today. So yeah, it just tells you I'm a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm a professor at Seton University, and it's just giving you some of the background with respect, you know, to I'm a 20 times world record holder in Masters track and field, 10-time gold medalist in the 800 and 1500 at the World Championship. And by the way, in 2015, I became the oldest person to ever run at a World Masters Track and Field Championship. At that point in time, they selected 9 athletes from across the world from 50 and over, and I was 56 at the time, and I was the oldest guy in that event that they selected, and I actually ended up placing 4th in that event. So this is just a little background about the 2 individuals. So this is just another little background about John Marshall. You know, he's I think I can move this up. Yeah, they told me I can move this. Let me move this over here. I just want you to see this, all right? So he's 1984 U.S. State Olympian, World Age Group record holder, Junior Pan American Games champion, as well as an NCAA champion. So you can see we had a vast amount of experience.
Just a matter of housekeeping, Doc. In case we are supposed to see your screen, we are not seeing it at this time. Oh, yes, I'm seeing it. Oh, sorry about that. All right.
Okay. You've seen it? Wonderful.
Yes, I'm seeing it now.
Right, right. So again, this is just a little bit of background about the at the beginning, I talked about athletics and academics. You know, you combine the two according to double A's. When you combine athletic with academics, right, you can then go on to proceed in order to get you a scholarship. And I want to add one other thing. In Trinidad and Tobago, we are not aware so far. Well, I'm not going to say we are not aware, right? There's another process in order for you to go to college in the United States, and it's called boarding school. And the only reason why I know that as well, because my son went to a boarding school. My son went to a boarding school for 2 years, right? So he had finished junior. He was a junior in high school, right? And, you know, he was good, but I didn't think he was getting a lot of scholarship offers. So we decided to send him to boarding school. And the boarding school was like a 95% scholarship. And at that point in time, the boarding school cost about $33,000 US dollars, right? So he got like a 95% scholarship. He had to pay a small amount of money. But that's also an avenue for kids in Trinidad and Tobago in many different sports in order that if they are finished, I'm calling it high school in Trinidad, and they need to improve their academics, they could go into boarding school, and many boarding schools will give them full scholarship, full scholarship in order for them to improve their academics, you know, and have better opportunities to go to Division I schools in the United States of America. So that's what, right? And we also talked about the program will be a year-round program. Another thing we also include is the SAT, which is important. Anyone that's going to go to Division I school in the United States of America have to take the SAT, and we were going to involve SAT classes. Right? I'm getting good at this, boy. And this is the first time that I've actually used Zoom to do a presentation, right? At the school, we use Microsoft Teams. So what we were committed to create and empower the country leaders of tomorrow. And we were going to do that through sports, right? We have a network of solid relationships with a team of experts to help all these athletes who are going to be part of the Sport Development Academy reach their potential, their full potential, right? And we were not only about educating athletes about the recruiting process, but also helping them to be the best candidate possible. So we were there to help the athletes to make sure that they're the right fit. It's kind of important for when people are leaving, your home for the first time. The college that you're going to go to is the right fit. Sometimes we send kids to schools and it's the wrong fit. And after a year at the school, sometimes these kids will end up back in Trinidad and Tobago, as an example. So we also had a vision, we had a mission, and we had an objective. These students with all the things that they're trying to accomplish. Because you got to remember, these are future, sports representatives for Trinidad and Tobago. And we had an objective, we wanted to provide the best quality training for the students, and which is most important. I'm sure Diane Henderson would like to hear this, to help win Olympic and World Championship medals for the country. But that's what the end result is. The end result is through this academy, we can identify the kids who are going to be our future Olympic and World Championship gold medalists or medalists, right? Or finalists, right? So it's important, yes, to win medals, but to make these kids be finalists. So 1 year they could be finalists, and maybe a year or so later, they could become actually medalists, and also to build model citizens and leaders of tomorrow and to increase the number of scholarships. And these are just some of the principles that we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about respect and responsibility, loyalty and trust, integrity and honesty. Students come first. We wanted them to be very creative and have imagination as well. So I know some people might be asking, well, Anselm, what are you talking about, right? We had that too. We had already decided what sports. We had soccer, basketball, track and field, tennis, football, swimming, volleyball, wrestling for men. For women, we had soccer, basketball, track and field, tennis, volleyball, swimming, and field hockey, right? So field hockey is actually a big event here in the United States of America as well, where you can get a lot of scholarships. There's so many. And this Sports Development Academy, and that's why, I coined it Sport Development Academy. It's about developing the athletes for the future. I wanted to say something, but let me just say that, right? Now, also, we look at what's going on in Trinidad and Tobago, right? This was also young, and to provide them with peer interaction and opportunity to develop problem-solving skills, as well Through sports, SDA believe kids will build character as well as increase their self-esteem, develop life skills necessary for success. So you can see that even though it's a sports program, we are also interested in developing these kids from a young age, right, in order that they can get on the right track early, rather than doing other activities that may not help them in the future. And we also had how Sport Development Academy works. We have, let me go back there. Right. So we have technology, we have relationship, and we have people. Right. Three big facets of the whole thing is technology, right, which is important. What type of relations do we have? And the people that makes up the academy. Right. So how does it work? Continues, right? We want to create a lot of success stories for years to come, right? By taking these eligible high school students and place them with the right college program, right? And how are we going to do that? These three elements that we just looked at there, the relationship, the technology, and the people, right? And we can help fit athletes and their families with a scholarship to the right school. So at the end of the day, right, we want to give these athletes an opportunity in order for them to be the best future of themselves, right? And if they see that if I put in this work, I can right? And we want to give the athletes an opportunity, for these 42 college coaches in the US. We got 42 college coaches, all right? And all we want is one of those college coaches to decide they're going to give an SDA athlete a scholarship. We're not looking for all 10 of them. We're just looking for one, and we want to make sure it's the right fit, right? So we can also partner with athletic clubs and media outlets in order to help us increase the recruiting probability and extend our reach. Then we have technology, and this is very important. We have a recruit matching database that's allow you to create a custom profile with stats, highlights, and skill video. This will be able to have your information available to the public. So for example, you have an athlete in Tobago. He is a 100-meter runner, 100, 200-meter runner. He can run 21.5 in a 200, and he can run 10.5 in 100 meters, right? He has taken the SAT. He has scored 4. Soccer player, you got to do little videos of yourself, all right? And you upload those videos on base. Coaches will go and they will see you performing, and because in soccer, that is kind of important. Because my son also attended Drexel University on a soccer scholarship, and one of the things we had to do, we had to create a soccer resume per se, and coaches will look at his resume. And not only that, but we also played in tournaments. And that's another thing we got to bring to Trinidad, to get teams out of Trinidad and Tobago to come to the US and play in tournaments. Because in tournaments is where a lot of the college coaches will go in order to recruit their next players for their team. So you get that opportunity, you come to a tournament, there's tournament in Disney, there's tournament in Virginia, there's these tournaments all across the country, right? So this is just an example of the database. This is what it would look like. You have athlete, you have parent, you have coach, depending on what you are. You have your email, password. You have You can choose your sport of choice, and you create a free profile. It's all free, right? And the last part of it is people, right? You know, the people involved with us, share a wealth of deep experience in college athletics as well as the recruitment process, and they are very motivated by the mission to help students succeed. We have been college athletes ourselves, and we have been through the process, so we know exactly what it takes to get an athlete from point A, to point Z. Now, this is important, right? We also did a SWOT analysis, which is strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So whenever you're doing these type of things, you have to figure out, well, listen, what are our strengths, what are the weaknesses, what are the opportunities, and what are the threats, right? So we just have some of the strengths. It's affordable. It's a full-time, faculty teaching. We're talking about the academy itself now. We'll have highly qualified coaches, full facilities, and job creation, right? Some of the weaknesses might be you might be unable to provide a scholarship for all student athletes due to qualification. As I said, a double A, academics and athletics, is not every person may have the qualification. That's why I talked about boarding school, as an option for those athletes who may not have the initial qualification to go to a Division I school, a Division II school, or Division III school. And there are also NIA schools as well. And another option that you have to actually look at is community college too as well. Because going to community college, you don't really need to have an SAT, because the SAT is kind of new to a lot of people in Trinidad and Tobago. And then there are opportunities, of course. When you talk about opportunities, there'll be more student athletes acquiring free college education. In addition to that, we could have more athletes becoming professionals. And the more professionals we get, we can then get some of these athletes to give back to their community and to give back to Trinidad and Tobago, right? Then we can also have more athletes qualifying for Olympics and World Championships, and possible reduction in criminal activities. Richard, did you want to say something? I'm getting close to the end, Richard. One, two, and three schools provide over $2.7 billion, which is $16.2 billion team athletic scholarship annually to more than 150,000 students, right? Although all student athletes do not always go to become professional athletes, however, they get the education in order to prepare them for life after college. It's not everyone going to become a professional, but at least you now have an education that you could do something with life after college, right? And this is just another, why does SDA help students athletes? As I said to myself, I believe it was important because it's through a scholarship that I was able to go to college, and able to make something of myself in the future, right? And the thing I think is important here is we believe in empowering leaders through sports, right? Using sports, student athletes can maximize the opportunity to get ahead and give back. I think that's significantly important. And this is just, the 4x4, the 4x400 gold medalist team that won. The power for college degrees are high as ever. With a degree, doors and opportunities can open that we were not present previously. Right? And I think I'm going to stop there. I don't want to go into the other part. So folks, what this is just, if Tobago, because I know Tobago is so much a little more proactive, so to speak, than Trinidad. My father is actually a Tobagonian. He lives in Roxburgh, Tobago. So, I'm 50-50. I'm 50% Tobagonian and 50% Trinidad. So I think something like this can have a significant impact in Tobago because, of course, Tobago is about tourism as well. And there's about the population of Tobago is about 60,000 people. So I really think that this can have a significant impact. And there are many kids who are falling by the wayside. This type of program, Sports Development Academy, can have a significant impact on the lives of many youths in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm going to close there, and I want to say thank you guys very kindly. Dr. Phillips, thank you so very kindly for inviting me to this, and it was a pleasure. And I always appreciate, to give back, in this type of atmosphere to the beautiful Tuna Island of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you so very, very kindly.
We want to thank you so much, Sean. Anselm, and what we are saying is you stay on the line. We are going to invite Sean to make his presentation now, and then we'll take a couple of comments from Dan Anderson, and then we open up for all kinds of questions. So, I want to introduce let me say this about this goodly man. This is a Roxborough man. Is Betsy Hope? Betsy's Hope. 10 chains, even smaller. They define themselves separately. And let me, before he starts, recognize in this facility right now the Assistant Secretary of Sport in the Division of Community Development, Youth and Sport. He's responsible for sport, Mr. Wayne Clarke. Welcome, sir. Taking the time to be with us for this particular session. We thank you. And I was just saying that Sean Powder has been a tremendous contributor to this island very quietly in the area of sport and in the area of education. So let me just say sport and he will expand. We celebrate him for his involvement with lawn tennis in Tobago in the in the late 1990s and the early 2000s. And I stumbled upon his work because I'm doing also along with this Tobago exemplars of patriotism. And this effort of his was really astounding. I found it quite astounding. So I give you Mr. Sean Powder to make his presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. It's one of those things when someone invites you to be part of a panel and you learn 30 seconds before that you're making a presentation. So you're going to get rather impromptu. I want to thank Anselm for his presentation as well. Anselm and I have actually known each other for over 20 years. We live in the same town. And it's ironic that I learned that he had a passion for IMG Academy and made these presentations to the government because I never knew that. The precursor to IMG Academy, and part of my background, how I was involved in tennis, was the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy, which developed greats like Andre Agassi and Jim Courier. I worked for Nick Bollettieri and Arthur Ashe in my youth. Nick eventually sold Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy to IMG. Then it became an all-sports facility. But all the things Anselm was saying there regarding the sports development, I did with Nick and the late Arthur Ashe for 8 years of my life. And it's that work and that relationship that led me to get involved in lawn tennis in Tobago. I would come down every year with my kids, primarily in the summertime, to visit my father, my grandmother. And I got involved with the Crusoe Isle Tennis Club. From there, we realized there was a need. There weren't the courts that you see there now. We were sharing the netball courts at Shore Park with lawn tennis. And we developed a relationship with then Chief Secretary Orville London. And we said, how can we fix this? I started primarily by speaking with Arthur Ashe and with Nick, and I said, we need rackets in Tobago. So they gave, that time, Andre Agassi had a contract with Dunny Rackets. And they gave me 2,000 rackets and boxes to ship to Tobago. The assembly at that time paid for the shipping. From there, we continued with rackets, balls, all the equipment that was required to develop lawn tennis in Tobago. At one point, we got to the point where Tobago had more school-age children playing lawn tennis than Jamaica. And that was a tremendous effort, not just by me, but people like Coach Anthony Williams, who's still involved, and people of the Crusoe Isle Tennis Club. From there, we were able to get many people, young people from Tobago abroad on scholarship. Many of them I see going around now, they're working in high positions because they never became professional tennis players, because that wasn't the goal. The goal was to get them to university and use sport as a way to develop their competitiveness and their desire to be excellent. One of the things that in many areas of finance and engineering and development, and that's something that we're very proud of. One of the other things I did that Dr. Phillips spoke about is we were involved in collecting books for the libraries in Scarborough, and I'm sorry, in Roxborough. On a visit there, I realized that there was a dearth of books. So we worked with colleges in the U.S. to just get books for the library, so the children would have college-level books as well as other resources there when they went, children and also adults. The latest initiative I was working on was with the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association. We created a program called the North American Talent Identification Program, where we would identify boys and girls in North America, Canada, and the U.S. that could help represent Trinidad and Tobago. At that time, the TTFA had just changed leadership from the late David John Williams, and William Wallace was there, and Keith Lookloy was the technical director. I had been pitching this idea dating back for 3 administrations of the TTFA, contacting and coaches in all over North America, all over Canada, that would help identify players who had, well, first of all, were good enough to play at the international level, because we didn't want just players that I know he looked real good. We wanted players that could compete. And we developed a database and a standard nationally and in Canada and the US, where we identified boys and girls with scouts going to the games and recruiting players. The first initiative we had, first tournament we provided players for was for the girls under 20 tournament in Dominican Republic. And that girls team with 7 players that we had identified got to the quarterfinals of that tournament. No boys or girls team has done that since. That was a testimony not only to my work, but the fact that we realized none of us can do this alone. And my fundamental belief with developing the North American Talent Acquisition Program with Justin Reed, with Keith Lookloy, and all the other coaches and scouts is we have to learn to leverage the expertise in the diaspora and coordinate it with the talent and the work that we have locally. We're not going to be able to succeed in anything we do without utilizing the diaspora. The USA in sports gets players from Germany, Holland, Denmark for football. We cannot believe that in small Trinidad and Tobago with a 1.6 million population that we're going to be able to do it from our local talent alone. We must access all the resources globally. And that's why I agreed to, well, I come to Tobago once a month anyway, but when Dr. Phillips said that he's going to have this, I said, if you need me to do anything, what little I can, I'd be more than happy to partake. So what I would say, I just in Tobago is as good as everyone everywhere else. And I think this is something oftentimes we grow up with not having a personal view of ourselves positively. That could be because of color, because of hair, because of the way our nose, whatever it is. We grow up with very challenging things where we don't have immediate instinctive belief in ourselves. So I believe that people from Tobago have talent. Second thing I have to say is I have to have a passion for what I'm doing and what they're doing. After that passion, I find people who I can trust, who are going to work with me. And the people that I can trust then have to be competent. And that's been the four things that I've been able to have some level of success with sports and the collaborations I've done back home. I will only add with what Anselm was saying about sports is that it does reduce crime. One of the things that we had a tennis program with Arthur Ashe and Nick DeBalteri, it was focused only in urban areas. In Newark, New Jersey, which was the car theft capital of America, in Los Adidas equipment. If they got an A average, if they got a B average, they got a $250 bag twice a year from Adidas. So those were things to reinforce, because you just can't ask the children to just do stuff unless you give them some positive reinforcement for their behavior. I think, so that's the last thing that I would add, that it's critical. Sports is critical for crime. And the reason that professional athletes are so prominent today is they've developed these skills about being competitive. And the thing that sports leads you into, I played lawn tennis growing up. The things that it leads you into is you meet people, and people get attracted to you who have money. I'll just call it like it is. You meet rich people. You meet talented people. You meet people with assets, because they want to be around successful people. That opens doors for you. My primary business is the real estate business. Most of the people and the progress I've made in the real estate business is because I met them playing tennis, or I met them playing golf, because sports opened those doors for me. My three sons, I'll finish on them, they're kind of the guinea pigs of why I say sports is important. My eldest son, all three of my sons played for New York Red Bulls. My eldest son, Noah Powder, was at Red Bull. He went to Europe for a while. He's playing now. He scored the last 2 goals for our national team in the stadium. Trained in the summer. My wife was a teacher. He trained in the summer when he was younger with Bourne St. Clair. My second son, Samori Powder, was also called up to the national team. Didn't play in the last game, but he was called up. And also would train with Bourne St. Clair in the summers. He didn't go professional now. He's at university on a full scholarship in Michigan. $75,000 a year, and I don't have to pay a penny. He asked me to buy him a car, so he got a car, because I didn't have to pay the tuition. The third son, he's at Real Salt Lake Academy. He's got 4 offers on the table. And he's been invited to play with the Trinidad and Tobago under 20 in the next cycle. He would have played in this cycle. Slept at my house all the time. Son of George Weah, who played for Milan. His father is now the president of Liberia. These are the relationships we must continue to build, and we can build them oftentimes only through sport. I thank you for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Anselm is still on the line.
Yes, I'm here.
Testing. Okay, we did.
Yeah. I think she's here, you know. She's there.
Okay.
She's there. I think she's there.
Miss Anderson, good afternoon. Just an audio feed.
Afternoon.
Okay, so Miss Henderson is the
Patiently listening and waiting.
right. A bit of multitasking. As I said earlier,
Yes.
Miss Henderson is the president, the current president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee or Association. And I believe
female and 11th president.
this deserves a round of applause. Eh? Thank you very much. We would like you to say a couple points you may have, if you were able to tune into some of the conversation before, your own perspective, and then we would let the panel, let the panel exchange.
Observed and nice to. I'm hearing that I understand that Mr. Clarke is in the room. So greetings, Mr. Clarke. We spent some time together last week in our games activities and our guests or visitors. Yes, I must admit that I was asked to attend this forum a bit impromptu. So by listening, I got a better gist or idea of the topic on the what it is all about. So I just wanted to. I have nothing planned.
Yes.
However, what I would like to do is probably just some of the observations I made out of Mr. Bourne's presentation that struck me, as well as some of the things that the TTCGA have been working on and hope to advance in the future is well, let me start with the TTOC that because that as the young athlete and those elite athletes leave Trinidad and they go to internationally to study and to prepare both academically as well as sport-wise, physically. Yes, I agree, they do get all the opportunities available to them. However, one of the things we had looked at is the other models that, and everybody has, or the other models that that are out there, and that is Jamaica for one. And how can we bring that to Trinidad? Not their model specifically, but what will suit our culture. But also, how can we provide or offer certain university, college academics to at that level, to our young people, while having the high performance and sports science support that they need to advance their physical and sporting careers. So we have been partnering with the MJP Michael Johnson program for some years now, and presently doing a lot of assessments, and that has helped quite a few athletes in their progress, as well as we have turned our attention to advance by different, we had Anthony McConnell doing work with netball and other disciplines, so that we can actually raise the level of our coaches in Trinidad and Tobago. And I know you're all focusing on Tobago specifically, but it is across the board. Because if we can advance coaches in Tobago as well, and have, whether or not whichever universities or which other offerings the so that many of our young people and athletes can have those opportunities here. What for those who are unable to reach abroad and get it there. So that's one of the things I wanted to mention. The other thing is that in the presentation, I just noticed something that was a question that I had, and maybe Mr. LeBon could respond in that in terms of the technology side of it. I love the idea of having the database and everything. My only concern was the provision of, in this day and age of technology and the digital world, provision of personal information for certain, we don't know exactly if it's only coaches, videos of self, and whether or not any of these athletes may be under 18 or underage, and providing of information that may need to be monitored. Because coaches themselves are one of the perpetrators. I'm not putting a name on anything, but as we have seen in recent times, some of the perpetrators come in different categories. So we have to be extremely mindful of the the information on the database. While that may have been 2015 when it was first done, we have to be looking at the changes and the adaptability of how that would be now today with the kind of advancement in technology and. So that's just an observation I thought that could improve that if, in any form or fashion. So basically that is my initial comments, but I am all for it. I'm sure the TTOCs, we are all in a position to support any sort of sporting and academic careers.
I just wanted to answer Ms. Henderson's question regarding the technology observation, right? The information that I have was a presentation that I did years ago, right? But things have been updated, and that information now, only coaches, right? We will have to make sure that we understand and know the coaches who will have access to that information. It's not any and anybody. As a matter of fact, one of the things we were thinking is that coaches have to actually subscribe to that information. It's not just any and any coach can just go and have access to that information. So it's important for coaches to know that you will have to subscribe to that information, and I mean, we can keep tabs on the coaches to see when they have certain type of activities that are not not on the up and up, so to speak, but at all costs, this is to protect the information of the kids that are on there, by any means necessary. And one other thing I want to add, Dan, I know that you are the new TTOC president, and I congratulate you on being the first female president of the Trinbago Olympic Association or Corporation. But I gotta say this though, and I like to keep it real. With all the talent we have out in this country here, with respect to sports, and when I saw to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, right? My idea was put into the dustbin, and I'm keeping it real. My idea was put into the dustbin. But a foreigner came to Trinidad, Michael Johnson came to Trinidad, and he was allowed immediate access to sports in Trinidad and Tobago. What about our experience? I have been at this for years now, for years. And not only that, I remember some years ago, Linford Christie doing a sports camp in Moruga. And I asked the question, but wait, what are all these other guys who live in this country who are Trinbago and want to give back to the country? How about them? And I could even go further to say, Miss Henderson, is that You know what? I'm not going to go there. I will leave it there.
That's the passion coming out from Professor LeBon. And I want to get some feedback. Sean, you want to weigh in at this time?
Can you hear me? Yeah, I would say to Ms. Henderson, Mr. LeBourne, oftentimes what we see is that we have a one-off program that people come in. And I think those are the worst things we can do. You can always pay a celebrity to come down and do something, but any development that's required has to be consistent and has to be long-term. Because we have to be able to measure it. If someone comes in and does a 2-week camp, there's no value. Anselm and I are fortunate enough to live in the same town, and I see him out there training every morning consistently at his age. And we all know his age because he tells us how many masters, awards he's won. So if he's doing that consistently, he's going to get the results. My 2 older sons, Anselm helped them with their running technique in preparation for football, so they did cross-training with him. If we didn't get that type of trust in his competency, trust in him being able to provide it, and then him doing it consistently, I wouldn't have the results I have with my son. So Anselm, I say, don't get too upset when they do these one-off camps, because they don't work. I see people coming all the time and doing a one-off ceremony. It never works. You need to have something that's long-term. It takes so long to raise the child that you can't do it in 2 weeks.
I want to introduce Mr. Clayton Clarke, who has joined us. Mr. Clayton Clarke is a sports journalist. I would call him a multimedia journalist in the field of sport, and he's been working his craft for a good number of years. He's been attached to I-95.5 newsroom and sports desk for a few years, and then he returned and worked in a little while with the Tobago station, Tambourine. But he's been in the arena of sports, especially going to jaunts overseas. Not too long ago, he came back from covering the World Juniors World Junior Championships in Santiago, in Colombia, and so he's with us as well. Another informed sports personality. But there's one point I want to introduce here, and I appreciate Ms. Henderson's reference to the coaching, and that is extremely important, because I would assess that we have a 3-prong approach to grow our product, or to improve our general sport and Olympic sports in particular. And it involves the technical side, which is heavily coaching. It involves the provision of infrastructure, which are facilities and opportunities to be outside, and you have Mr. Powder, who is dealing with identifying that talent in different countries that people could come and represent Trinidad and Tobago, all towards the growth. So somebody could pick it up from there. I don't know if Ms. Henderson wants to come back in.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Phillips. Let me get it correct. So you spoke about having a 3-prong approach, and definitely we have to approach this thing. It's not just one. We want to have continuity, consistency, sustainability of programs. We don't want something that would just come up and stop. So But one of the things I feel that is that the sporting organizations, in some form and fashion, have to take some responsibility in terms of ensuring that their clubs and their coaches in the clubs, because that is where the talent comes in, the communities and in the clubs, right? And in order to ensure that they get the correct, I'm just looking at this purely from the sporting aspect first before the academic, but the whole idea is that if they can actually stay or remain in Tobago and get the necessary high performance to get too passionate, but it's not wrong in his wanting in the past his schools and universities, get back physical literacy in the from primary up going up. You know, every aspect, every approach that we can come from, that we can take, will help and advance, one from juniors, one from seniors. We need to all work at different areas and different levels in order to get that done. And the NSOs as well have to work at the advancing and taking up every opportunities to get their coaches, and not every coach will be responsive to that, is reaching the sports science level. They have to be able to up the ante and reach that other level to be able to get a certification in high performance, so that we can then get our athletes here. I'm just looking at the alternative of everybody having to get a scholarship to go away. I'm not saying that it's the only one, and I'm saying that the scholarship is the norm. Most students, they leave here, they go away, and they get scholarships. And Mr. LeBon, I'm sure that your approach is quite reasonable and everything. So it's just making the connections and getting it, putting it out there for athletes, and so to take up the opportunity, for young people to take up the opportunity, if it will be less cost worthy. Because from what I saw recently, the cost of university is now over 30,000 US a year. So university fees have not gone down from, I think I heard a statistic recently, in 2007 or 2009 it was 5,000 US to get into some, and now it's 30,000 plus a year. So I think that's when Biden did his, I think that's where I got his statistics from, when they just did their announcement about giving a credit to some students in different categories. But so, I hope that helps. As I mentioned before, I have nothing written and planned, so just contributing to the conversation.
Okay, Mr.
To go to school.
Exactly. Of course, I could be at the low end of the
No, when you average. Sean had said something. Now, I also create what I call Running Development Academy in New Jersey here. And I say to the parents that come to me, that bring their kids to me, that think of Running Development Academy as SAT prep. In this country, hundreds of thousands of millions of parents send their kids to SAT prep in order for them to improve on their score in the SAT. You know, and I said to the parents, I said, when you come to Running Development Academy, my goal is to prepare you to be the best athlete you can be in the future. And not just only on the track, but also life skills as well. Because, you know, I mean, it's not just running up and down the field, you know. Now, some of the top clubs here in New Jersey, top soccer clubs, a lot of the kids come to me for running, to have them with their running, their stamina, and just as Lester said, with regards to, you know, the way how they run, because, you know, they think when you're on the field, you run anyway and anyhow, you know, so when they come to me, I kind of fix them with respect to them when they go to the field. And after just 2 weeks and they go back to their club, the coach tell them, but you know, you look faster. Not that they have gotten faster, but they have a few more extra skills in order to run properly, as an example. You know, so that's just when Lester brought that up. But I know
Could I
I am
hold? I
someone
want to
very,
ask Clayton to come in. Anselm, hold a while.
All right.
Clayton,
Good
Clarke?
yes.
afternoon to Mr. LeBon and Ms. Henderson. I just want to respond to something mentioned. Ms. Henderson, you mentioned about the clubs and the coaches, and I know the TQC and other bodies do certification for coaches, and we have all the different levels and the psychology and all these different things in terms of preparing teams and athletes. But something is missing in terms of, I don't know, something is missing. Their culture is so much a part of, and then we so focus on winning and losing that we forget that part of it. I remember being with a Jamaican team, and there was a guy not doing well, and the coach idea is let him is doing all the necessary right, but something else seemed to be missing. You travel with some of these islands, or you be around them is a different kind of chemistry. It's not about the winning and losing, looking out for each other. You come back in the airport, you see how the team, sometimes everybody just go their own way. Nobody wondering about how you're going home, or you're coming to the airport. I remember traveling with a Jamaican team, and I was in Jamaica at the time. So the flight is 3 o'clock, they meet for lunch, and going to the airport is a bus with food because it's young people. They come in the airport, nobody had to go and look for taxi at 10 o'clock in the night. They put them up and they leave the next morning. And these are kids. The care and concern, sometimes we're so concerned about winning and losing that we forget we're shaping and developing people. So I just want to add that.
I think that's an extremely valuable point. My son, the eldest one who now plays, who represents Trinidad and Tobago, he was eligible to represent Trinidad and Tobago at the under-15 tournament. And we came down, he was selected, and he also had the opportunity to go with the Red Bull at 15 to Austria to play against Manchester City and Man United and some other teams. So his first opportunity to represent Trinidad and Tobago, he gave up that opportunity. And they were forced to withdraw from the tournament. So to your point, I think this is not within the communities. This is oftentimes the culture within the organization. 2 weeks ago, the under-15 girls were told they couldn't get visas for Trinidad and Tobago football. They did not travel to play the tournament after having trained for a year. A week ago, the under-14 boys were told they couldn't travel to the tournament. Haiti under-14 boys end up winning the tournament. A country with significantly less resources, significantly less wealth and organization, who's also under normalization, Their boys went to the CFU tournament and won the tournament, and Trinbago canceled the tournament for under 14 boys who've been training for a year and a half. There's absolutely, and I will say this, and I don't know Ms. Henderson, I will tell you this, the fish rots from the head. The culture at the head of the organizations who run sports in this country is repugnant. I deal with many sports, not only football, because my sons are there, with lawn tennis. I hear the stories in field hockey. I hear the stories in swimming. I hear the stories in cycling. The problem is not the children. The problem is the adults and their selfishness, their politicalization, and their bias in how they run the organizations. It's not the children. We are getting the product of the adults and what the adults fail to do. And that's why I continue to be involved, and I very rarely say that I got sanctioned by anybody. In 15 years, the only person within football who agreed is Keith Lookloy, and FIFA removed him and William Wallace from the head of the TTFA and normalized the committee, and since then we haven't won anything. And we've dropped teams and disappointed boys and girls in stadiums over and over and over again.
And I want to follow up on that, right, Sean? I mean, you hit the nail on the proverbial head, because, I mean, I represented Trinidad and Tobago many times in the past, and some of the same things I see today is the same thing I see when I represented Trinidad back in the 70s. It doesn't seem like if things have gotten better, things have improved, because many times, many of us who are involved in the belly of the beast of sports want to give back to Trinidad and Tobago. They feel somehow we want to come to Trinidad and take away what's theirs. Nobody's trying to take away anything from anyone. What we are trying to do is to use our expertise to make the country better from a sports perspective, right? And that's what it is. So sometimes people say, who you think you are? And I can give you guys a story. Just recently, someone called me and said, Anselm, my son needs a scholarship. I immediately called on my friends, right? One of my coaching friends. And the coach said he will offer that person a full scholarship, sight unseen, not sight unseen, because I made the recommendation, right? The father spoke to the son, and the son said, I don't want to go there, right? And now I have to go back now to the coach and tell her, listen, the guy says he doesn't want to go there. And before I went to the coach, I told the father, I said, listen, this is the school. Talk to your son, make sure he knows about it. So it's a school that I think he will be very successful. And he said he don't want to go there. And that's not the first time that has happened. So I'm saying that we out here are looking out for the kids and trying to do what's best for the kids and put them in the right place. It's some of the adults that are involved in the sports in Trinidad and Tobago, who need, to move into the 21st century.
And I want to agree with Ms. Henderson now. I know I disagreed before, more or less. The whole issue of our education system. So yes, the culture needs to improve, but somehow sport is sort of separate. And even looking directly at our school system, sport is still a when you go to Port of Spain, the bus comes at 3 o'clock. And these are kids in town who live in town. The bus comes at 3 and they have to go home. And so you have the people from Toco traveling far, the people from Point Fortin and Tobago have to take a boat or a plane. But the Port of Spain area, we have bus and they have to get permission to stay past 3 o'clock and some of these. So the meshing or the mashing or the gelling together with the educational system. We have secondary school again, where the football happens after hours, but some of the other sports having a challenge beyond 3 o'clock because kids have maxis to catch and lessons to go to, and you don't have an arrangement to do makeup lessons. Few athletes I know had the privilege when the training, the particular schools made arrangements, so they started school at 9 in the morning rather than 8. They worked through their lunchtime, but these were special, and the parents probably spoke to the schools. But we need to, our education system is, sports is separate. That is how we kind of treat it. You get your academics and sport, and nowadays sports giving you scholarships. Sportsmen are businessmen, sportsmen with the degrees and the masters, and you watch them simple. So I support that we need to get that work going.
How do we integrate sport into their life, and which model in the Caribbean or in a society?
Scheme, the boys and girls disappeared. We had boys and girls in Tobago who had tremendous potential in small Tobago in the 80s and 90s. And they just disappeared. And I would call the parents, the coaches would call the parents, no, they have to have a common entrance. It became so critical that where they pass for, that and it's something structurally that the education ministry and people have to look at, that no one's life's decided that young. No one. My cousin left Tobago 25 years ago, and they said, oh, he could only go in cadets because he ain't bright, he ain't good at maths. Today, he got his civil engineering degree from Pratt. He got his master's in construction. He is a senior engineer at the MTA, running the Verrazano Bridge that millions of people cross over, but we told him he couldn't succeed and he's only good for cadets because of common entrance. This is madness. We are depleting talent pools, and the education integrated with sports can help that, because people develop at later ages. We cannot tell anyone at that young age what they will become. And one other thing that when I get back to this, because one thing I didn't mention that, and Dr. Phillips, I think is how we may have met originally, is that last year I started an essay contest in honor of my aunt, Eureka Powder, who was deceased. She was a lecturer. She taught in Tobago, and then I was a lecturer at UA. She died of a heart attack at 40. And I partnered with authors in Trinbago and Tobago to do the evaluation of the essays. I was able to get on, are we done? I was able to get interviewed by Fazir Mohammed. We were interviewed in all the papers in Trinidad. The Minister of Education was there when we did the awards. Brian Lara helped hand out the trophies. Keyshawn Walker was there. I only raise this point because as a Tobagonian, I did my best to reach out to the people who were in charge of the teacher at that time. This is not a political statement, this is a factual statement. So I reached out to the Secretary of Education, I reached out to people in finance who are relatives, and I said, listen, this contest is coming up in November, December. I'm a Tobagonian, I'm supporting, you know I do stuff around. Some of you are related to me. I'm not telling you to use it as political leverage, but you could have. I said, get me on Tobago 5. I called Tobago 5, I couldn't get on. I called politicians to get it surrounded. I called the Secretary of Education personally. Nothing happened. We got not one entrant from Tobago. All the prizes, the 30,000 TT dollars that I provided, all the I say that to say, what's going on with the people who are making the decisions? Maybe maybe they don't like my face, but it could be that. But I'm just saying that the adults need to do better. That's all.
Inviting a comment from Assistant Secretary. Would you like to come up now? Or you speak from?
No, I don't think it's necessary. I could just stand. Good afternoon, one and all. And Bossman, first time I see your face, I have no reason not to like it. Good evening again. I just want to say that I have a short time sitting where I'm at so far, just a couple months. But the problems continue, Every day you go into work, you ask yourself, what now? Because we have a whole heap of problems. Half of these problems is just realities that we never choose to accept. And another side of it is that somebody raised a point just now about the coaches and they're being selfish. Yes, that's a good part. But, let me be clear, not a good part in terms of nothing positive, a good part of the problem, a good portion of the problem. But we have to understand that without a proper framework, without a destination, any road will do. The only reason we swing up when we came across the road is because this was our destination. So without a destination, actually any road will do. And we doesn't have a framework. We got to get down to work to put a foundation down that even in your absence, who put it down, it could still function. Right? We have real challenges. Let me just draw a reference like in the schools. You have challenges. The athletes who have the potential to go on, the athletes themselves are so confused sometimes because they have to choose between what the parent want, what the coach is saying, and sometimes they never even have enough time to come around to what they are thinking. And that is a problem in itself. So I'm looking at possible solutions. Sometimes we all have to be on one page to make anything work, the various stakeholders. I used to coach soccer, I still do, but sometimes you go through a whole youth program with a child and you don't know who the parent is. Because a large part of our society, despite what we see on TV, sometimes you just see it as a picture. And you don't ever see yourself there. So applying yourself ain't possible at the time. Or getting the buy-in from the parents. You go to the school, you hear the teachers tell you, you said, Miss, we can have this boy outside for a couple extra hours, during the school time. Can we all have an arrangement where we could get some extra lessons? And usually the teachers actually tell, when it's 3, I done. So it's a whole lot of problems. What we see most time, without getting into it, if you're not inside of it, what you see is just the end result. But we have to look at the contributing factors, and now we have to try to have this foundation that we could stand on, that we could all go forward with one mindset. A lot of parents still look at sport as a hobby. So that way, anytime you ask the children now, you seem like you're asking them to choose between a hobby and their education, and most times education wins. I coach football teams already. I coach at every level of these schools. Right? Because it seems sometimes like that's the best place to be. See if you could try to help make that foundation properly. You ask the teachers, all right, let me give you one experience. I was at a secondary school once, and we used to have a couple morning sessions. And when you're training in me, I drive you really hard, because I want to bring out the best of you. And sometimes that's the only way. And I was telling the teacher, Miss, something wrong there. How we just get these children in the morning, in the evening is a whole different thing. Sometimes it's a little better, sometimes it's worse. I said, do you all connect with the parents? Do you all see where these children live? Do you all see the challenges they face with? Because you have to know these things to coach children. And amazingly enough, I must tell you that I'm a primary school dropout. I didn't go on. But I didn't think that because you're out of school, you stop learning. I live every day trying to be better than yesterday. So I said, Miss, you know, from my limited knowledge, you know, these children, you sure these children have breakfast? When we do our check, 70% of those children came to school without breakfast. And you would not knowing that trying to drive them hard. All you're doing is helping kill them. So I'm saying that we, as much as we want to think elite, as much as we want to think all the big things, we first need to understand where we at here and have something that could relate to our situation here. And use the things that, some of the things that you offering, which is good, use it as the destination. First, let us have as a coach for children here is that you're going to be poor and you're going to have to deal with a lot of ungrateful people. That's the only two things you should have. No, I'm telling you, I'm being real with you. I live it over and over. So what I'm saying is that I think the onus is on the stakeholders here to first accept where we are. And then let's look to chart a course that could get us where we want to go with the buy-in of all the people who could make that possible, the stakeholders, the parents, the teachers, the education system. All these things play a part to get us there, because as much as we go out there part-time to coach and the teachers part-time to teach, all these things are full-time jobs, eh? But as much as we do that, remember, we're trying to recruit sportsmen. But the pusher trying to recruit too, and his incentives are always more attractive in front. So if we don't come together, 20 years from now we'll be sitting here singing the same song. Only might be a different set of people because some of us might pass on. But I'm saying that it now is not only ripe in some areas for this country for us to take up the mantle and move with it. But we got to understand that to achieve anything, the stakeholders have to come together to make anything work. Thank you so far.
Thank you for your insight and the anecdotes you have given, Assistant Secretaries. We want to just change a little gear now, Diaspora. Going back to what Sean had presented on. And I'm asking, so Trinidad and Tobago wants to become a more competitive nation in multi-sport, which is the Olympics, Pan American Games, Commonwealth Games, and so on, at the highest level. And you just got an example from Sean about some girls' team and how that team was populated with a few people that they scouted in the arena outside. And I say we should have a little conversation on that before we conclude. The perspectives from Anselm and the other panelists here. And I start by just making reference to the fact that in 2004 or 2005, because we went to the World Cup in 2006, Trinidad and Tobago included a white boy in their lineup by the name of Chris Burchell. And from that time, there was now a little recognition of the fact that you could hire or bring into your teams people with T&T lineage. Not T&T Bourne, but even lineage, as the scouts for Jack Warner had found. Comments invited.
Families. I know you're right. Something and let the panel discuss it regarding Dr. Phillips' comment is that the other thing I wanted to mention regarding what we did with the identifying talent abroad that I neglected to is the critical part is two things. One, Trinidad and Tobago is the only country that doesn't allow citizenship via grandparents. About how do we change it so that if you're let's say you immigrate and then your mother's born in England, your mother immigrates to England, your grandmother immigrates to England, she's born in Trinidad and Tobago, your mother's born there, but you can't get your passport from your mother because she was born in the UK. But most countries you can get it from a grandparent except for Trinidad and Tobago. That's one thing. The second thing that's critical is that not only did we develop a scouting network, but we also had established contact with the embassy in Washington, D.C., and every consular general in the U.S. that represents Trinidad and Tobago, as well as, even though we only had a platform for North America, we talked to the people in the UK, we talked to the people in Cologne. I can call Andre Laveau in New York on his phone and tell him, I have 3 players who need passport processed. And I will admit, they get faster attention because he knows they want to represent Trinidad and Tobago. The chief immigration officer in New York was a cyclist for Trinidad and Tobago. They support sports, so they help with the passports. Those are 2 critical things that I think when we talk about the diaspora is you have to build a network to help people, because some people real vex with the consul. They don't want to go to New York, they don't want to go to Miami. They say the people there are rude, they're not processing their papers. So we acted as intermediary, getting the people the papers, get everything ready, so we can help facilitate that quick passport processing. Those are the only 2 things.
I want to comment on the whole issue of the sport, getting our talent. I want to cite 2 examples. The Nigerian sporting people have their own way. They go to the US and look for Nigerian-born athletes. So the basketball team for the US is Nigerians. I just came back from Cali, as mentioned, and we're in the media room. And this is kids, huh? The amount of them running for Italy, strange enough, Italy, of course, Great Britain, of course, America. The Nigerian hired an American coach to be recruiting folks because they're concerned about elite. And the challenge was the coaches back home are complaining, you all are doing nothing to develop the sport. You just want medals. And that's a big problem. Kids as high school migrating and running for Bahrain, Qatar, as I mentioned, of course, England. Bahamas hosting Carifta a couple of years ago. Their first plot, go around to all the islands and get the athletes. Start to recruit. and get athletes. It wasn't for the character alone, but to identify all the talents. There was a girl who went on to run for them, very crude, very rough. If you see her, you wouldn't think she grew up in a house. She just graduated from Yale or one of those top universities. And they say if they didn't go to the outer islands and find that talent. If you see her, very rough. Remember we had a girl in Trinidad, same thing. She could barely, her coordination. The coach who worked in England saw what he could work in her. She could be, listen, if you see her walk, very robotic. She went to one of those prestige schools that don't play sports. She went to the NCAA, finished before the 4 years, won CARIFTA, she got a doctorate, and this is somebody we didn't look at. So the idea of developing, sometimes we focus on the top, because we want medals, we want the recognition, we want the funding from the government, we want the sponsors, but we forget the bottom. So my take in this, we have to support the bottom. And it's not about medals. I remember in Trinidad, before they built the National Aquatic Center, the only long course pool was by St. Anthony's. And these kids from San Fernando were coming up every morning to train and go back down in time for school. And I'm into sports journalism, and it got into my head too. I can't be just about covering athletes who win medals, because we get caught up in it too. We just feature the athletes who win. So the women's football team lost when we went to Mexico. No journalist was in the airport to give support because they didn't win. Nobody showed up because we are about winning, and we didn't want to hear no excuses. So my take, the bottom, and you can't be thinking now for next year. The Olympic cycle, when England were hosting the Olympics, 8 years before they identified athletes, and they started to work with them for the 8 years to come. I know we have our Paris 2024 gold medals, and a lot of people have been asking what has been put in place. But things don't happen overnight. And intentional things, I forget what I was discussing with the other day. Oh yes, we had this sporting workshop. Everything intentional. We can't wait for things by chance. We have to plan intentional. We can't wait and hope that we go to our games and we get medals, and we have to hope that some foreign-based athlete come and do well. We can, yes, we could supplement with the foreign-based.
I think that was Mr. Clarke speaking, right? You know, all of these things happen, and I think the Trinidad and Tobago public sometimes, you know, as we all know, temporarily engaged, if I want to use those words. But, you know, there's a lot more focus in several areas that we need to pay attention to. And earlier on, I think Mr. Powder referred to the NSOs and those in authority and their lack of, the adults and their bias. One of the things that I personally was happening, and there was a great platform, stuff was happening, and I think that we are seeing those little things coming, a little bit of comfort or complacency has set in, and we have to hold the reins again and get that back going because we noticed that some NSOs are falling back into a comfortable position of not seeking for all, but for some. And this, it has to be athlete-centered if you want to be in a position on an executive, a sporting organization executive, in order to be supporting all athletes. I'll just leave that right there now. Totally agree with the diaspora. Maybe there's some form of external affairs or something that we can capture or make use of that can assist us with our the conversation is a good one. Um, Nevertheless, I wish everybody all the luck and that we could continue the conversation in terms of strengthening the whole idea of getting our athletes the support they need totally, you know. So thank you again and for the opportunity. And I want to just say good evening. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, good evening.
We appreciate your contribution this afternoon, and thank you for taking the time to be with us at short notice. Thank you. All right, so we are going.
I wanted to say something, all right?
Okay, hold on one second, Anselm, because
okay,
what we're
yeah.
going into the last 10 minutes, and I would want what you speak of would be like your closing comments one time. And before we do that, I just want to ask if there's anybody in the audience that would want to make any input. Okay, Mervyn, could you hand him a mic, please? And I just want to repeat that this program is being streamed on Gael Network. So there would have been a couple people seeking to follow us. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello. Hearing me? Okay. I'll be very brief. Tomorrow, I'm asked to speak, and I will connect with this lady from the United Kingdom. But since you're talking sports, and I will not be talking sports tomorrow, I'll be talking the diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
Let me point to sports in the diaspora context,
Mm-hmm.
and personal situation. Is there anybody in here who remember when Trinidad and Tobago was beaten 1-0 by the United States and not allowed to go to the Olympics? I think that was in 1987. World Cup, sorry, I say World, very good. World Cup. Well, prior to that experience, because the Trinidad and Tobago football team came to Los Angeles every year, Gold Cup, and I have still have a home in the California area, I spoke with Mr. Camps, that was your manager, Oliver Camps. And the point I made to him, and let me clearly say, in a nice way he refused, was you need some spotters here in the United States from among us in the diaspora. I just made an important point there that it will not happen by osmosis. You sitting here and wishing, you got to put some things into action. And yes, this arrangement here with Andre has structure And that is what is important. So there's hope. Let me go now to the World Cup and be short. In fact, I had we could have talked, Mr. Thompson, if you had something arranged, we could talk. And we need to talk. Do I need to go more further than that? Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, if no one else, let's go to Anselm with his general comments and closing remarks, and then the last two panelists.
Yeah, I have a passion for sports, right? And I love all different sports. It doesn't matter. I'm into track and field, but doesn't mean just because I'm pro track and field that I'm anti cricket. I like cricket too. I like baseball. I like soccer. I like all different sports. I just love track and field. But when I talked about the Sports Development Academy, I talked about getting scholarship to all sports. And I just remember this too. It was a trifecta, right? I actually came to Tobago too, and I presented to the management. I presented to the party in power at that time. I also presented a modified version of Sports Development Academy for Tobago, and that actually went nowhere too as well. So it seemed like this Sports Development Academy program is. I had to change the name of that, but to something else. Yeah, but I want to say that is that the assistant? Hey, guys, can you hold 1 minute, please? 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute.
Put their points forward. Oh, sorry, we have a question or comment.
I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that.
1 minute. We have a comment from Ms. Benskin here, the spoken word artist
Okay.
who. Okay. Go ahead, Anselm. She said she'd give way to you.
Yes, yes. Yeah. I also presented. I said I also presented to the sports administration in Tobago as well. The same idea, kind of modified idea, for Tobago as well. But I see Tobago have, a new set of people in power, and I would like to have discussions with the people there in Tobago as well, because I feel, my father from Roxburgh, I have brothers living in Tobago, and I've said I'm 50% Tobagonian and 50% Trinidadian. So I want to own my Tobago side of me, right? So I will be very much interested in speaking to the people in Tobago in order for us to discuss how we could get this type of program in Tobago as well, because I think it's very important. And I just want to say that, I am very passionate about Trinidad and Tobago. I'm passionate about, kids, I'm passionate about inspiring kids for a better tomorrow, because it's through my track and field that I was afforded to go to a school. And at that time, the school may, of course, 40,000, and my parents couldn't afford a penny for me, to go to that school. And it's through track and field, I was able to go, and do significant things. And there's a lot of talent in Tobago, that can come out here and be successful, with that can have an impact on these kids' lives who may not have done, so well in academics, but they could go on and do a year or 2 years at a boarding school on a scholarship, and move on to something significant in a Division One, Division Two, or Division Three school. So I just want to say, Dr. Phillips, thank you so very kindly, for allowing me this opportunity. And I know Sean very well. Sean and I live in the same community, and we've been at this now for a long, 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 long time. And we haven't given up. I think Marshall Montana about something we're not giving up. So we're not giving up. So thank you so much, Dr. Phillips.
Thank you for your tremendous insight today, sir. God bless you, and we will continue to work on these initiatives going forward. Let us just hear from Ms. Benskin.
I'll remain seated. I have a herniated. This is giving me some trouble. All right. Sports. When I was growing up, I grew up in a troubled household, and I didn't feel like I belonged there anywhere. The PE teachers at school recognized my ability, physical ability, but because of the abuse and stuff I was enduring at home, I couldn't be a netball player. If you hit me with the ball too much, too hard, fight break out. So they put me as a hockey goalkeeper. And, if they put me on the field with this hockey stick, fight break out too. So she pulled me and she put me on the goal. So I'm just saying that sports is important for, young children, the youth, especially the troubled youth, because I didn't feel like I belonged at home, but on the hockey field, I felt like I belonged there, and I tried to give back to Trinidad and Tobago. Well-being, sort of changed my mood, and I became, more inclined to perform academically better. So I tried to give that proposal to the government then, and they scoffed it. And I'm interested in the arts as an award-winning spoken word artist and poet. I want to give back. I would like to operate poetry workshops, etc. But, like I said, when I presented my proposal, I was told they don't know who I am. Who are you? Do you have an agent? I said, well, as a born trainee, I want to give back to the country. So you got to know who I am. I'm telling you, I'm a born trainee, and I want to do this for the young people. So arts is important too in the young people, and I hope that, you all can have programs with sports and arts. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Phillips. Yeah, the title today was, I have a fun time with this on and off mic, it seems, was Sports Development, Crafting the Architecture for Global Success for TNT National Teams. I think what most of us would agree is that sports development is really about national development. If you integrate it with your education, your goals for tourism, and your goals for infrastructure development, and your goals for development of a human capital. I worked for Arthur Ashe after he contracted AIDS. He developed something called the Arthur Ashe Safe Passage Foundation. And they use tennis in urban areas and Nick Bolteri to target kids who are at risk. The kids who are the poorest, the kids who have the most sadly dysfunctional families who directly relate to crime. And they said if we can get them to tennis, to a sport that's not traditional in urban areas, and then we infuse the things. We always had an affiliation with a medical hospital. In Newark, it was Newark, Jesus, they renamed it so many times I can't remember. It's a UMDNJ, where the dean of the school, of the medical school who'd been on Oprah, he was part of our board. So he dealt with the medical component and dealt with the things that importantly, particularly if you're looking at targeting kids to college, because one of the things that Arthur Ashe always said, less than 1% will become professional, but you can get kids to university, develop the human capital. You get kids out of Tobago, get them qualified, that's human capital returning to Tobago to help the country develop and to help Tobago develop. That was always my belief with sports. One other component that I think we neglected was I have a very good friend in Costa Rica, and he and his family run a program where they bring American high school and college teams to Costa Rica to train. Most college teams have a week over before spring break or thereabout, and also high school teams where so many of these high schools and colleges in America, they'll fly the entire team, the entire soccer team, the entire field hockey team, and they'll go train there. So he's developed a sports tourism business in Costa Rica where he brings at least 30 teams every 4 months from America, and they come and train. He's partnered with the government. He gets access to the facilities in Costa Rica so that they can have tournaments for the kids who are there, and then they also go to tourist sites. These are the things that we can use sports for. So a sport development is also about national development, and I think that's how we have to frame it more so than we do. Thank you.
All right, first I want to apologize for being late. I was supposed to be out of the country yesterday, and the days just keep pushing back. I was supposed to be leaving tomorrow. So apologizing for that. Start to understand and think like that, because a sporting game, you need food, you need transport, you need everything, you need money. So it's a process that we all need to be a part of, and we need to stay grounded. Sometimes we get in positions and we forget why we came in and who we are there for. Always we have to remember to stay grounded. Some of those little kids are my heroes. I could tell you that. Writing about them, covering them, they're my heroes. Not just the one who win gold medals, because of the journey you see where they progress and where some of them didn't like sport at all, and they saw the light click. So I just want to end with that. Thank you.
Thank you all very much again for your participation. At this point in time, I would like to ask if the Secretary has any closing remarks of his own, any commitments maybe to open the door for Anselm to have his program, his proposal sent to you and such like. Could you come this way, sir? Right. As you come, I'm putting another thing into place.
I like that plug, Dr. Phillips.
Yeah, I had to put him on the spot.
Dr. Phillips.
And I never set up. Growing up on the street, you're never getting the things that you can't come out from. And the easiest promise to make is the one that you could keep. So promise and commit that I will listen every proposal that comes through the door and treat it in the fairest way that I could.
That is sincere enough. Sir, could you still come forward with the mic? And may I get you the... Deborah, can you bring one of the convention bags for Tricia? Tricia, I would like you to make a presentation of our convention bag to the Assistant Secretary of Sport. He was here yesterday for our concert. I realized he stayed the whole journey, and that was remarkable. And he's back again today representing the Chief Secretary at this point in time. Tricia is our UK rep on the board. She would make that presentation now.
So just before to wrap up.
Yes.
It was a pleasure being here for this.
Yeah, come forward, right.
It was a pleasure being here for this And we look forward to listening you, trying to understand you so that we could work with you. And not only you, anybody who has the interest of the young ones at heart. We all come from different backgrounds. We all have our own challenges, but challenges are there to overcome. And once we are in this together, we got to look out for each other. And I have no doubt that we could succeed together if we just work together. Thank you.
Am I getting one virtually?
We would invent an approach. It's due for you. Just come down.
You could set up virtual bag, you know.
Present to Mr. Clayton Clarke for being able to postpone his trip. He don't know it's a postponement. And to come this way. And so, folks, that brings us to the end of proceedings. We continue tomorrow. I want to recognize this lady who came from his finance. All right. You have some marks going high for tomorrow. I can't tell you what. Right? We take note of her. What's your name, ma'am? Miss Guy. All right? She's on a short list. Of the Gaia Network, Errol Fabian and Mushi Fabian, we thank you all so much. What he's responsible for all that we have going on the website, and we urge all of you to take a look at the website and our Facebook page, because they are portals of information, among other things, research and information. A pleasant evening again, Mr. Anselm Bourne, as we get ready to take off the Zoom feed. I also want to thank the Zoom link provider, Mr. Richard Fredericks. Thank you so much. And we want all of you to be back here tomorrow morning for 9 a.m. A pleasant afternoon to all.
Okay, take care. Take care.